although I have stopped saying this because I realize people grew up with these things and they have fond memories of them, and it's burned into the lobes of their brain because they'd watch Return of Jafar over and over and over and over at a tender age. I don't consider it a good movie. It's like I've not watched it in I don't know how long,
All right, welcome to This Week in Nerd History, a podcast where we take a look at all the fun, dumb, nerdy stuff from the past, present, and future. I'm Mike. Joining me, as always, we've got AJ and Sal. And we've got a very special guest this week, legendary animator, writer, co-creator of Rescue Rangers, creator of Darkwing Duck, of course, Tad Stones. Thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
We got a lot of fun stuff we want to talk about today, but maybe you could just tell our listeners a bit about your long and storied career, just to catch everybody up a little bit.
I started at Disney Studios, feature animation studios, in 1974 in their training program, which was just, us and Eric Larson. And you had like 8 weeks to do a personal test of animation. Luckily, I knew a little bit about animation because otherwise you're in the position of having to learn animation while you're doing a test that will determine your future. And then you survive that and you go for another 8 weeks. I came in 5-6 months after Ron Clemens, feature director, you might know, and 3 months before Glenn Keane, one of our top animators of all time. Eventually moved into story there and then was pulled out to do an educational short subject. And then because I had played with that edutainment kind of thing, I was sent over to WED, now known as Imagineering, to work on rides for Epcot Center. Then I was supposed to do these Epcot documentaries, which nobody had bothered to tell the network about. And the network said, I believe the quote was something like, we have our own news divisions to do low-rated documentaries. So,
Wow. Burn.
Well, especially, this was back when Disney was a really small company. And a lot of upper management, had worked with Walt, and the vice president was literally Walt's son-in-law. Very small place. We spent a lot of time playing around the studios. I had been on the rooftop of every building there. And, the sound stages were used for storing 16 millimeter film. So we went up in the catwalks and threw super balls off to see how far they'd bounce. I assume some are still there, hidden in the cracks of the floor. That mentality meant that, they said, we're building this big Epcot thing. It'll open up on October 1st. That'll be a great time. We'll have these documentaries, one a night. They had all these plans. And back then, the television news season, there was a specific season of about 2-3 weeks that coincided when all the new car models came out. And that's when they debuted all their new shows. And they weren't about to kick off their brand new shows to put on famously low-rated documentaries. Anyway, licensing needed help. This is before TV animation. And to really sell stuff, features only came out every 5 years, because the department when I was there was 55 people, not counting ink and paint. And those are the ones who did Robin Hood, and that's how big the studio, and the Rescuers. Anyway, licensing wanted to get on television because that's how you sell stuff, as opposed to waiting every 5 years to put out toys. And they wanted somebody new animation to brainstorm like featurettes that they could put on. And I came in for a meeting, and we said, yeah, we're kind of open to anything, with the classic characters. One thing we have to do is Sport Goofy. We really want to promote that. He's huge in Europe as a soccer icon. Anyway, I went away, came back in the next meeting, which was in less than a month. And the writer who was there had come in with some log lines. I came in with 2 4x8 foot storyboards of color pictures for Mickey and the Space Pirates and Sport Goofy. The writer just kind of turned his paper over and didn't go through it. Anyway, what that did for me, and Sport Goofy at least was developed, and we actually did, it went through many hands after mine, actually, even eventually being a training project for new animators of features, and was Soccer Mania, I think it was called. That cemented in their minds that I was this really creative guy. He writes, he draws, and everything. So when the management changed, Michael Eisner, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and that crowd came in, and they talked about TV animation. I was one of the people invited to Michael Eisner's house the first Sunday of his first week at Disney. That's how important he thought getting into TV animation was.
Nice.
Fun meeting, showed pictures of Mickey and the Space Pirates. He said, "Oh, this is great, except we can't do Mickey yet until we are sure we can do things well," and all that. Famously at that meeting, he said, "You know what?" When we were just kicking things around, he said, "You know, my sons went to summer camp. They came back just talking about this candy they had, gummy bears. I swear anything with the name gummy bears will be a huge hit." I went back to whatever I was doing at the time. And then like 9 months later, I was actually considering leaving Disney. I just felt like, you know, if I could freelance storyboards and make about the same salary, that would be it. And then I could like write science fiction short stories to feed my soul or whatever. That was my plan. Anyway, when I saw one of the guys at that meeting, Michael Webster, who is now heading up TV animation, and mentioned, "Hey, do you have any freelance spots?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know that you want to do that. Why don't you come over and visit?" And I went over to their quote studio, which was basically one hallway, like where they were doing both Wuzzles and gummy bears, and that ended up with I was being introduced as, "Oh yeah, Tad will be coming over here."
Well, we got him. He's already working here.
Yeah, I was smart enough not to deny that, just kind of logged it in. Anyway, I ended up at TV animation, technically first in management. When we had a Gong Show coming up, there was like we pitched, I think, like 22 shows, maybe one or two more, and 18 of those were mine. And those were just literally the one that I always remember is Trojan Birds and Legionnaire Cats. And thank God they didn't go for it, because it would have been a very hard show to do. But the idea was just kind of a Roadrunner and Coyote thing. So imagine the city of Troy up into giant trees like Ewok land. And then the cats were the Legionnaires trying to. So it was constantly them trying to get up and all that. And if you've ever watched a bunch of Roadrunner cartoons in a row, they're genius shorts. And then after a while, it's just like, okay, I'm ready for the Flintstones or something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, finally, as they approached the third season of Gummy Bears, NBC wanted a change of story editors, and I was tapped. They told me I was actually not just story editor, co-producer at the end of the run. And I said, if I had known that, I would have given different notes. But even then, like, storyboards came through me, and I did drawings on them and all that. Again, having both sides, and worked with writers and did a ton of writing myself.
Yeah.
It was really fun getting people with very little writing experience, but just entertaining people, and some people who had worked at the other studios and knew what things were going on, but kind of adjusting the mindset to what we wanted to do with Gummy Bears. And then that started the career. After that was Rescue Rangers, and almost left the studio again. And then Darkwing Duck, and stuck around until they kicked me out. So I finished up the last 10 years of my career just working on various projects. Adventures of Brer Rabbit for Universal. I ended up at doing a show for Netflix called Kulipari, the Army of Frogs. So I did the first season of that, which was nothing I would have ever concocted myself, but we were adapting a book, and we had inexperienced writers, so I had to basically more than write the equivalent of a feature in, I think, 2 weeks. And then I had to do the same thing to the second one while I was directing that first one. So that was fun, but it was a good way to go out. I always say I went out with the cool kids working for Netflix. So.
That's amazing. I mean, it's an incredible career, and the amount of like adjusting or just completely different thing. I mean, to go from like animation test to Imagineering to like all these new, not necessarily like new skill sets, like you know how to do all this stuff, you're very creative, but like the adjustments or the mindset of like being in a different position, like is that something that you just became accustomed to, or was there like an adjustment period that you had to work through?
Ultimately, it was always, I told this because my two favorite projects in my career were Darkwing Duck and the Hellboy movies. And Mike and I talked about it for a while, and I said, well, really what we are is storytellers. So it's not the medium, it is although obviously visuals are a huge component in both comics and animation. So that was the same. And I loved working with a talented crew. I always said my job was to find people better. I knew a little bit about everything, enough to be dangerous. But, my goal was to hire somebody better than me at any one of those individual, tasks. But I retained enough. I mean, obviously I knew Photoshop. So on one of the Hellboy movies, we had a scene with a werewolf and there was a fire in it. And the director said, hey, I'd like to push this red using the fire with it. I thought actually that was a very good job. And we were looking at the backgrounds and it was reddish. And he said, no, more. And the guy kept like tweaking things. I said, let me sit down. And I shoved all the dials all the way to red. So everybody went, oh, Dad's gone crazy. I said, okay, now watch. Now pull it back. Or actually, I didn't sit down. I actually reached across and moved it for him.
Even better.
And I said, okay, pull it back a little bit. Pull it back a little bit. And then we got to a part where it looked really dramatic, really red. I said, okay, that looks good. I said, now show me what you were doing. And they were shocked at the difference. What they thought was red was not as graphic and everything that they could have gone. Yeah. So that was a case of, again, me knowing just enough.
Well, I know you worked on the Aladdin show, and that helped transition you to directing some of those movies, like Return of Jafar. I think at the very least you co-directed with the third one.
How it worked is all of our syndicated series opened with generally multiple episodes that told one story because they were run vertically, meaning, over the course of one evening in order on like a Friday night. And so it was the stations could hype it as, see this, new Aladdin movie, see this, whatever, so that was Darkwing Duck. They could lead up to that and had a thing. Rescue Rangers had the same thing, as did DuckTales, had more than one of them. Meanwhile, because I had been all around the company, obviously, I knew some people at Home Video, and I talked to a guy who I had met. It was like middle management kind of guy. I said, technically, I'm doing the sequel to Aladdin. Now, the only reason why I did this was because I was watching our budgets kind of shrink a little bit, certainly not growing with that. And I said, if we could bring in an extra revenue line, a new source of revenue that could say, look how valuable this is, that might keep our budgets up. Now, in truth, it doesn't matter. They'd still keep the budgets down. Disney loved the original president of TV animation, Gary Kreisel, because he treated Disney money as if it was his own. It was never like... I remember when Return of Jafar came out, made so much money, they gave a bonus, and which was divided over many people, the entire crew, which ironically pissed off some of the people of the crew because they got like $50. Well, others at the top, me included, got a lot more. And it was like, how much did this make? And I'm getting $50 or $100, whatever it was. I pitched. I said, technically, I'm doing the sequel to Aladdin, and he took it to his higher ups, and they were not interested in. Then they released Aladdin on video. And I made the exact same call again to the same guy. He took it up to management. They were very interested. That suddenly, and fantastic. You know, the fantastic thing is that we started the show with, Arabian Nights, using some of the verses they didn't use in the movie that perfectly hit Aladdin. So, in our opening half of the Return of Jafar was done by Disney Australia, who were fantastic animators. And they had a guy who's especially good at animating horses, and Paul Felix.
Those are famously easy to draw.
Yeah, exactly. Paul Felix had done all these conceptual drawings of horses galloping over the desert. He later went to features as a concept artist. So between Paul's talent, the animator they had doing that sequence, and the music, the thing, it started, and that whole first sequence went right into like the Cave of the Thieves, and Jeffrey stopped the film. He said, "Guys, this is looking pretty good." Now, Jeffrey knew how much Aladdin cost, and he knew how little our thing cost. And he began he says, "I want this finished up like an A movie." So I got to work with literally a sound effects guy who had just gotten an Academy Award for Twister.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, when it broke records and started that whole industry, which is either a plus or a minus, depending on who you're talking to.
Are you essentially
really
saying
cool.
that you helped to birth the renaissance of Disney directed VHS sequels? Is that are you claiming authorship of that right now on the show?
I would say renaissance is a debatable word.
I use it as in only a complimentary manner due to the nature of the fact that you're here in front of us right now.
No,
But,
I mean, I will say short, yes, in that at one point. And the only way I will say, because I would say yes, we had one meeting with my boss, and he gave a bunch of notes on things. And I said, okay, but we got to finish this by whatever it was, March 14th. And this was pointed out to me by, I think it was Mark McCorkle and Bob Schooley after the fact, that what had happened is I said, we got to do it by this date because home video is interested in doing it and blah, 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 blah. And he said, don't worry about that. Just, we got to worry about this. Now, what he was saying is it's the project matters. But basically, he walked out of the room and I said, yes, we have to do these notes. Maybe not this one. But it has to be done by that date. Right. And they pointed that out to me. So I'll take credit for that. And of course, once they came together and obviously it did start things. Eventually they did some really nice ones. I think Return to Neverland was one of the nicest ones that they did. But again, our budget for Aladdin and the King of Thieves was not much higher, if any, than our normal divide up into episodes and do that. So, I mean, there's always that limitation. Plus, suddenly there were more executives involved and all and that. And for a while, I did that one. I was going to do the sequel to Lion King, and then around then, I just said, "This is not for me," because it was way more hands-on. There was like, even within the department, we had people giving notes, and it's like, you're giving notes, you can't say yes. You can only say no. You're giving notes, and it's like, this is the person I have to get to. And just not a position you want to be in.
It's interesting that you had such a close-knit relationship between the shows and the kind of like home video movie world, and yet, for your pioneering of some of the most beloved series from the Disney afternoon, we didn't see much cross-pollination from show to movie outside of things that had already been movie properties. Like, we never really got like a Darkwing movie. We never got like a Tailspin movie or a Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie. Like, as opposed to
some of that stuff was actually started development. And if the DuckTales movies had done better, they might have happened. But specifically, with Darkwing Duck, and this is at the beginning because they wanted it to come out like in conjunction with the series or whatever, which you can debate whether that's a good idea or not. I took a shot at Darkwing, remember, and I had already been working on the show. So it's like, oh, here's a thing. I think it had an Aztec kind of feeling to it. I totally forget the details. Whatever, I pitched it. No, we didn't like that. And that's just my first boss. I never got to Jeffrey there. And I realized, okay, I could be spinning around on this. And I said, look, I can't do movie development and series development at the same time. I'm going to just stay on the series. So that was fine. And Alan Burnett, who was still at Disney at the time, actually watched over pitches and all that. Our French studio pitched a version of Darkwing, and it was obvious they hadn't bothered to look at any of the scripts or that. So it was like, I mean, we gave them an episode to do. I think it was the third one that went out, and it was like one of the last ones to come back in. But beautiful, but they went heavily into the spy thing, and it had, it wasn't what our show had become at all. So I always say that when people say, why wasn't there a Darkwing movie and all that? I said, thank your lucky stars there wasn't, because
be glad you didn't get one.
Because suddenly the show would have steered toward the movie instead of the other way around. And I said, when fans say that, what they're saying is, why wasn't there a good Darkwing Duck movie? And it's like, well, nothing's guaranteed, So, that's where it was all in the same building. Again, we were still very small, even though we were expanding. DuckTales was a huge success. That led to, all the stuff that came later. But, I think they just, instead of going for television properties, I mean, there was talk of Gargoyles, doing a live action movie. It keeps coming back every once in a while. But it was kind of like, why do that when, we've shown that it's the features that, are bringing this huge box office, and that's going to deliver a big audience to the, to the television screen. Okay, here's a self-effacing story. I mentioned I was supposed to do Lion King. And again, although I have stopped saying this because I realize people grew up with these things and they have fond memories of them, and it's burned into the lobes of their brain because they'd watch Return of Jafar over and over and over and over at a tender age. I don't consider it a good movie. It's like I've not watched it in I don't know how long, I don't even own a copy of it anymore because I had one DVD copy, and we needed a present for my brother-in-law and his kids or something. So my wife said, let's do that. You can always buy another copy. Well, I could never bring myself to buy a copy. That was the copy I'd gotten for free. Anyway, so, I mean, that was... When you say the Renaissance and all that, it was just like that was the mix of the scourge, and evidently I was told that whenever there was a meeting that included Peter Schneider, who was running features at the time and television, Peter would end up the meeting basically campaigning that TV animation shouldn't exist, or certainly the direct-to-video shouldn't exist because they were
like diminishing
the Disney name or something like that. And Michael Eisner in that first meeting, basically his philosophy was Disney is a top name in animation. When people think of animation, they think of Disney. It should be everywhere that there is animation. Now, we never ended up doing shorts inserts for Sesame Street or anything like that. But his feeling was wherever you show up, you should be the best in that. That should be your goal. So TV animation was never supposed to look like feature animation. I mean, the output. But it should be better than what's on. Now, the bar was very low of what was on at the time.
Well, that's why, like, Gummy Bear was such a revolution, because, like, there was an approach to it, as I, knowing the history a little bit about, like, that development was, there was an approach to it that said, like, I look at what's coming out right now, like Filmation and Hanna-Barbera, all that stuff. Like, and it's just kind of like, raise the bar a bit. Like let's see if we can make it look as close to feature as possible. Well, on a TV budget.
Well, and also it was, again, more stories that we were all, I mean, I had come from features, of the group. I think I was the only one. There is just a different kind of storytelling. And the way, specifically like in Gummy Bears, and don't hold me to this, but I was thinking of it at the time. If to try to make it stand out, you didn't go for the easy pitches that you'd seen in other shows. So if you had, I remember Ted Anasty, who was a story editor on Smurfs when it was #1 and was then hired to Disney to, be one of the key story editors on DuckTales. He'd said, we do the thing, if there's a magic harp, the Gargamel would hold it in his hand, and then we'd do a cut or whatever, a cutaway, and then the Smurfs would be able to hold it in their hands. And my feeling was, no, our approach would be, no, there's a magic harp, and it's either a Smurf-sized harp or a Gargamel-sized harp. If it's a Smurf-sized harp, that means Gargamel is trying to play the magic harp with chopsticks or something like that. And if it's a human-sized harp, then there's, you tell a story of teamwork, and the Smurfs have to take turns bouncing on the strings. And either of those things gives you new gags or a more interesting setup than just doing that cheat, which just make things easy. It's like, don't make it easy, make it, it's like, oh, I never thought of that, So
right,
yeah, it opens it up. Yeah.
So it was that kind of thinking that we had in our stuff that in Gummies was. I mean, I loved in the 22-minute episodes of my season of Gummies, which was the 3rd season. Doing the shows, and I was remembering I hadn't read Lord of the Rings a long time, but I knew there were talking trees, and I did an episode where the Gummies, were in this forest of talking trees and whatever. And eventually bringing them water. And, I just loved the chance to, tell that story.
The reason why you're here, more or less, outside of just getting some wonderful insight into that era and your own illustrious career, is because you co-wrote this comic book that no one thought would ever be, called Gargoyles, Darkwing Duck from Dynamite Studios. The first issue came out on the 4th of February, and it's a 4-issue miniseries. You're working with Greg Weisman, so it's like the architects, creators of both properties coming together to bring us this story that I don't think anyone could have seen coming.
Yeah, at least of all me. Yeah.
How was that? What was that call like? Was it just did they send Greg to call you, or was it?
No, it was it basically Nick Barucci, the publisher of Dynamite Comics, has a weekly show, I think, where he shows off original art and does contests and things like that. And they invited me on, just to do a little interview. It was Nick who said, have you ever considered doing a Darkwing Gargoyles crossover? And I laughed and I said, well, if you can get Disney to agree to it, I know Greg would be up for it because Greg was part of the early days of Darkwing.
I wanted to bring up the fact that Dynamite Entertainment did a Kickstarter for Darkwing Duck graphic novels that was funded just minutes after it went live. So, how does that feel? Were you new to the Kickstarter scene at that point? Had you ever done anything like that before?
No, I think that was the first one, and that was one of those things where, I mean, I'm debating my head. Am I supposed to say things like this? In general, a Kickstarter started. What I've learned, it's like, and this is important for anybody you want to support. If a comic artist says, I'm going to self-publish a graphic novel, generally the price they put up there is not all the money they need. It's they want to lower it to get it the excitement to say, hey, it funded in a week, it funded in a day, it funded in 5 minutes, whatever it is. And so really, if you believe in a project, it's just, you sign up for it and all that. But yeah, that was just amazing. I'm always... Here's the thing. Again, I started with Ron Clemens, Glenn Keane, and, they obviously stayed in features. They could always go to a movie theater and get the reaction from people in the audience, and know what worked and what didn't work. We had ratings, which for our syndicated shows came out well after we were done with productions, or at least the bulk of the episodes were past the point of no return before the ratings started coming in. But there was nothing personal about that. That's not applause or anything like that. And it wasn't until I went to my first convention as a guest after I retired and met all these fans and really a couple, came to tears about how much it meant in their life because Darkwing and Gosalyn's relationship was maybe better than the relationship they were dealing with at home or, whatever. It shocked me. So that experience and the experience of all these people signing up for Kickstarter for, a show, 30 years old, is amazing to me.
At one point, you had said that Gosling was what your interpretation of your then 2-year-old daughter was going to be like when she grew up. And so did she end up turning out a little bit like Gosling or were there some differences there?
Thankfully, she did not. No. So we were really extrapolating from a very young daughter and all of that, of what she might be. Yeah, it's equal parts her and Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes,
Yeah.
And that was the thing. I've been appreciated for, at least by some fans, for some strong female characters, specifically Gadget from Rescue Rangers and Gosalyn. And some of that was just treating them like a gag character, that where's the humor in this? In fact, in Rescue Rangers, one of the early episodes, if not the first one in script, Gadget's on the ceiling with like suction cup shoes that she invented. And the chipmunks come in, they get all excited and something going on. And she basically says, hey, wait for me. And she unstraps her shoes and, of course, falls to the ground. And Alan Zaslav, my, co-producer, said, I don't know if she would do this. And I stopped and say, Alan, we're kind of creating her, so she pretty much does whatever I say she does. And he thought about it, and he goes, you're right, and never had a problem from then on. So it was just treating them, because there was a big push that years earlier, where Saturday morning was way too boy-oriented, and then we need more female characters. And in the early stages, it was like the female characters had to be perfect, which meant the boys could be drooling idiots, but the girls had to be like perfect, which made them the boring characters and the unpopular characters. So finally, people started getting the feeling of that. But in our show, it's purely, here's a character taking up space. Why are they entertaining? So they're worth being there. And Gosalyn was, the one thing I said about Gosalyn and Darkwing is, look, we can never doubt that they love each other, because most of the time they're going to be driving each other crazy. So we made sure they hugged, and that sort of thing, that they really cared about each other, even though we routinely made gags about how terrible Gosalyn was, the dark entity within her or whatever. Yeah. Which actually plays a role in the 4-parter, as you'll see.
I have this little guy here. I have a little...
There you go.
Oh, you have a
Megavolt. Yeah.
Megavolt.
This guy showed up on our tree this year. We put him... we had a couple of toys that we were able to put little hooks on, and so he was actually on our tree. But what's special about this specific toy is that he's got a little... essentially a lighter function in the back here, and it's I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah, it sparks.
But it sparks, and it lights up his little front there when you do it.
That's awesome.
The perfect thing to hang on a tree.
Yeah. The perfect thing
You want
to
that
hang
as
on a
close
tree.
to Tinder as possible.
They don't make toys like this anymore.
That is true.
Because I'm pretty sure that's It's a hazard. It's literally like smoking and sparking.
Yeah.
What did you know this toy existed?
Oh yeah. I mean, we got
And did you
gave
have
notes
one of these?
on those early toys. Yeah. The actually, I
more dangerous.
More danger.
His slogan is "Let's get dangerous." Come on. What if
True.
Okay. Just a thought. What if Liquidator squirted acid? Too much? Okay, citrus juice, whatever. Anything that would sting the eyes.
We have a handful of fan questions from our Discord. Put the question out if anybody wanted to ask anything for you, and there's a ton of Darkwing fans on our Discord. One from, these are usernames, not the regular names, Russian Jackal. He said, first of all, Drake Mallard is a huge part of his childhood, and he wanted to say thank you for that. It really made his childhood special.
Wait a minute. Literally Drake Mallard? As opposed to Darkwing Duck? Oh, yeah. I love the guy in the sweater. I couldn't get enough of that sweater. You know,
he's a super dad.
He sat in that chair and it spun around, and then, he'd come out as Darkwing. I'd go, oh, jeez.
Oh, he may not know that they're the same person, so we'll keep that.
I mean, it's a subplot with Herb Muddlefoot. Oh, I just need more.
So he said Darkwing was his first introduction to the concept of like the multiverse, which is kind of prevalent everywhere in pop culture superhero movies now. He was curious how did the creative team land on that method of using the multiverse for bringing back Negaduck, and was there any concerns that maybe the audience wouldn't go for the multiverse concept?
That is a famous story I tell of, or not famous enough because you haven't heard it, of how it was the lack of continuity, cartoon sensibilities. We did an episode that introduced Negavolt because Megavolt had hit Darkwing with a ray that split him into a good side and a bad side. So Negaduck and Posiduck. And there were some concerns about, is this going to get screwed up in storyboards? Because we're literally drawing the character the same in black and white for the overseas studios. And can Jim do a convincing separation of voices? Jim came through brilliantly. And there were a couple of mistakes from storyboard to production, but I think we caught them all. There might be one scene that they mixed up. Anyway, at the end of it, I said, Jim did a great job with Negaduck. Let's do some more stories with Negaduck. And my story editor said, how do we do that? Does Darkwing get hit with the ray again? And wouldn't it be basically the same story? I said, no, nobody likes Posiduck. Posiduck is boring. Just do just bring back Negaduck. And they said, how do we explain that? And my famous words were, you don't. And that's all we did. Now, later on, there were episodes where there was an episode where we introduced the idea of a Negaverse, where everything's flipped and all that. And that was just for that story. It is fine. And, and now with the internet and everything and fandom, fans will construct their own stories. It's like in DC Comics, somehow the Killing Joke will always be part of whatever continuity they do. It just kind of depends. Is Barbara Gordon in a wheelchair or is she not in a wheelchair? That was the slight introduction. The other multiverse things that upsets fans is we would bring in Gizmo Duck, and he'd make, Launchpad would make a reference to, he never called him by name, I don't think, but I used to work for a guy in, Duckburg. And they, and I said, well, they're not really in the same universe. Fans went nuts and say, how good? And they would say,
when I first realized
they said like, Launchpad McQuack proves it. And I always said, no, Launchpad disproves your idea. And I said, no, Launchpad proves it because our Launchpad is way stupider than Launchpad in the original DuckTales. That's true. Notably a much better pilot in our show than in DuckTales, where he crashed every time. finally, when the guys did the reboot of DuckTales, Frank and Gonis said, "Oh yeah, Ted, we made him. We took the worst of both worlds. That he's even a worse pilot and stupider than he was in Darkwing Duck." But anyway, it was like I tried to explain that. Look, in Star Trek, the original Star Trek, where you have the evil Kirk and the evil Spock or the good Kirk goes into the evil world, and here's an evil Spock and evil, Bones and all of that. I said, everybody has a counterpart in that universe. So that's all I meant, is that you have different versions. Really, all it means is that if we're going to bring a character from DuckTales, we did not go back into the DuckTales episode guide and kind of see, okay, what storylines were this, or did they learn anything? No, it was just like, oh, I remember him. Let's bring him back. So
yeah, because it made me sad to think that Launchpad got fired.
Yeah, he just
or left.
Yeah, Launchpad is always loyal, if nothing else. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no. So
there was actually the other questions. You're kind of covering some of these parts of these other questions, but there's one involving Launchpad from Lego Monster 21, and Chase asked the same question. What made you decide to bring Launchpad into the show?
Jeffrey Katzenberg called me in his office. I want you to develop a show called Double O Duck, because he had caught wind of the name because we had done an episode of DuckTales, and his marching orders were, it can't star Launchpad McQuack. The whole point was to create a new character. We're turning out a new show. This is not going to be, a spy spinoff of DuckTales. Although marketing, we did call it a spinoff. Anyway, so he just loved the name. I've said this a million times, that Michael and Jeffrey believed we had to produce a show that people want to watch. That's the goal. Their feeling is, if there was something about a name that sounds intriguing, then that would bring a bigger audience that you would therefore keep, and then build upon. My first attempt failed miserably. It was just a straight James Bond parody, and Jeffrey pointed out I had no heart, to it. And luckily, he said redo it, because in more recent days, the normal thing would be to, okay, I'm going to assign it to somebody
just
else.
Kill it. Yeah.
No, he'd keep the idea. He'd kill me. So, one of our Dwayne Capizzi, who is one of my story editors eventually on the show, looked at that original artwork, which was, the character in a white tuxedo, but a mask and a hat and a cape. He said, he looks more like a pulp character, like Green Hornet or The Shadow. And that, clicked it off in my head to push. That would be a different way of doing a parody without, doing the Q and all the other James Bond stuff. But we kept paring it down. We had too many characters because of all these different specialties and all of that. And Launchpad, because he was just there from the beginning, just hung in there for some reason. At one point, one of the write-ups that frankly I did not remember until I reread the thing, going through files and stuff. Being a hero is a big thing in DuckTales that I'd kind of forgotten about, but it was like Launchpad constantly felt like he should be the key guy, not, this Double O Duck other character. Anyway, so it just pared down to, if you have too many good guys and then you're adding in a bunch of bad guys, you just have too many to service, So it got down to as Frank and Gonis, famous in my own brain, said to me, he said, "Oh no, Tad, we understand Darkwing is the story of a father and a daughter and a Launchpad." And that's really was the heart of the show. So that's Launchpad just like hung in there. And then it's like, hey, you know what? We could use a pilot. He's a good comic foil, the way we see the character. And it just, we took it from there.
Tad, I want to thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Lending your insights and your stories. This is like, man, if you haven't already, because I famously or, infamously don't do research before I do any of these projects. If you haven't already done like a series where it's just like Tad Talks, we got to have them, because it's like there's just so much that we could cover, but haven't the time, and it would just be great to get more. But Thank you. Thank you for giving
thanks
us
so
the
much.
time you
Yeah.
had.
My
It's
pleasure.
fascinating. Love it. That's it for this week. Thank you again to Tez Stones. That was awesome. I could listen to that stuff literally all day long. We were just talking about every kind of section of his crazy career. Insanely interesting to me. And I would look to like just
So many more questions.
yeah, insane. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe, leave a comment. What's your favorite Darkwing moment? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sure.
I'm terrible at these. So bad at them. Anyway, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Give us a like, leave a comment there too. It all helps. Yeah, we were just plugging stuff 2 seconds ago. So we're plugged out.
We're plugged out.
It's true.
Or unplugged? Whatever.
Yeah.
Unplugged.
Take us out, AJ.
We like you. We hope you like us. I'm going to be going to Disney.
You can like do it remote at Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll do it like at the Magic
why
Kingdom.
not?
You're just like sweating in a line the whole time.
Food
Sweating
poisoning. I'm trying to get on It's a Small World.
profusely.
We might be going next month, so
Seems like you should plan more for it.
yeah.